Over the last 10 days or so, along with the thinking, reading and preparation for theology courses I am teaching in the second semester through the School of Theology at Auckland University, I have been reading, thinking and beginning to write portions of an application to begin the first part of a diploma in spiritual direction at San Francisco Theological Seminary in January of next year, whilst on a period of study leave. The application has required me to somewhat introspectively consider what is important in my inner world, the systems and structures which hold meaning for me, and in particular, reflect on pivotal faith understandings that have been so much a part and parcel of my spiritual formation. So it is along with these dual layers of thinking and reading and contemplating that I have come also to the lectionary readings for today. In a somewhat serendipitous manner, the now 3 layers of thought have managed to coalesce, drawing me to think and speak today of the centrality of grace. The pull as a person growing in grace, as a member of the body of Christ, seeking to dwell communally in grace, and give flesh as a citizen of the world growing in its capacity to dwell in grace. It is this theme of dwelling in grace and so becoming imitators of God that I want to particularly reflect on today. The writings of C.S. Lewis, in particular his Narnia Chronicles, have made another comeback into public consciousness through the filming of the first 2 portions of the grand Narnia narrative. And I recalled earlier this morning that my youngest nephew, on seeing the second of the filmed versions, said how much better it was from the first, because the first was rather drippy. I've not quite been able to establish from him what the drippy nature of the first film was. The very conversion of C.S. Lewis to Christianity is a most superb example of an encounter with grace at the deepest level. Lewis, a deeply complex man, had succeeded over many years in resisting the invitation to embrace the God who had already embraced him. It was only to be in his later years that Lewis allowed himself reluctantly to embrace this knowable yet unknowable God. Hear him speak in his own words as he writes of this moment in his book, Surprised by Joy. I quote, "The odd thing was that before God closed in on me, I was in fact offered what now appears to be a wholly free choice. In a sense, I was going up Headington Hill on the top of a bus. Without words, and I think without images, a fact about myself was somehow presented to me. I became aware that I was holding something at bay or shutting something out. Or if you like, that I was wearing some stiff clothing like a corset or even a suit of armour, as if I were a lobster. I felt myself being there and then given a free choice. I could open the door or I could keep it shut. I could unbuckle the armour or I could keep it on. Neither choice was presented as a duty nor a threat. No promise was attached to either. though I knew that to open the door or take off the corset meant the incalculable. The choice appeared to be momentous, but it was also strangely unemotional. I was moved by no desire or fear. In a sense, I was not moved by anything. I chose to open, to unbuckle, to loosen the rein. Such was the moment of Lewis's conversion, a turning towards a fuller sense and source of life, a turning and a choosing to embrace grace as gift of God. With Christ at the centre, the compelling ethical power becomes that of grace, and grace alone. Grace is more than a word, much more than an idea. Grace is a way of life. Grace is about God and God's movement towards us and our movement towards our neighbour, bearing the image of God. It is about who we are, and it is about who we can still become. And my firm conviction is that we can only speak meaningfully of God if God emerges from within the experience of humans and their way of life with others and the world. Grace can be grace for us today only if it emerges from within the world in which we ourselves are immersed. For grace appears within our concrete world, liberating us from a decadent human situation and for a world more reflective of the divine possibilities. We must never separate reflection on grace from reflection on the world. For grace is always given in mediations, in negotiations, in relations, and in social structures. And to speak of grace in this way is to acknowledge that grace, in essence, has a sacramental structure. Leonardo Boff, Brazilian Franciscan brother, silenced for a time by the Vatican, speaks of grace as being the following, and I quote, "Grace is a mode of being that things take on when they come into contact with the love of God and are suffused with God's mystery. And in that sense, the whole world is related to grace." If grace be the gift of God, then also we are surrounded by signs of what can only be called signs of disgrace. Disgrace is present in all the mechanisms of social oppression that humans have devised and maintain. Over this week, we have seen and witnessed signs of disgrace as there has been further taking by force by Jewish settlers more Palestinian settlements. Signs of disgrace as we have read of further loss of civilian life in Afghanistan,